Today's video is brought to you by elisaesthetic.com, where you can get your own personal harmony style analysis. Visit elisaesthetic.com for more information and to book a consultation. Hey guys, and welcome back. Today I wanted to dive a little deeper into yin and yang and broaden our perspectives a little. Now, if you're new around here on this channel, I like to talk about the beauty of different aesthetics, as well as personal style, using an approach that is all-inclusive and intended to help bring forward your authentic beauty. So this method is based on the concept of yin and yang, and if you want more info, I'll leave a link to this video, which explains the method in detail. But like I said, in today's video, we'll be diving a little deeper into what I feel are two illuminating attributes of yin and yang, and that is weightlessness and depth. So we'll be exploring the characteristics of each so you can identify how they manifest within you, which can help you determine how to incorporate certain complementary elements into your wardrobe. So let's get straight into the video. Now, the goal of the yin-yang method is to connect us back to the garments we're wearing and bring forward our natural beauty. So when I talk about discovering our natural balance, I use two extremes for a basis of comparison, and that's yin and yang. Now, two adjectives you might hear me use a lot to describe certain aspects of individuals is depth and weightlessness. Now, in my opinion, there's great value in exploring the weightlessness and depth that exists within ourselves. This is an exercise that can really help illuminate some personal attributes that we may have been overlooking or just didn't consider. So to get started in identifying these attributes within ourselves, let's first take a look at how I identify these characteristics. First, we have depth, which is inherently yang. This implies a particular richness, intensity, and or firm quality. Physical examples include high contrast or deep and saturated features, high intensity such as piercing eyes or a heavy gaze, as well as sharp features. Essence examples include a deep or textured voice, a cool and mysterious demeanor, and a sturdy, immovable, or forward presence. Okay, now let's take a look at weightlessness. This implies a certain lift or airy quality. Physical examples include low contrast or soft features, low intensity, such as soft eyes and smile, as well as delicate features. And essence traits can include a soft voice that's usually slightly higher in pitch, coy or shy demeanor, and an innocent or softened gaze. Now, of course, this is not the full extent of possible characteristics that offer depth and weightlessness, but these are the most common characteristics I've seen among my clients and case studies, and overall, I think they paint a pretty vibrant picture of what to look for to help identify each. Now, like I said, the purpose of discovering yin and yang traits like weightlessness and depth is to help us create harmony within our wardrobes. So in theory, there's certain attributes of clothing that will naturally complement these features. So let's take a look at how to best accommodate these features in our wardrobes, starting with depth. So if you're an individual who has a lot of depth in your personal yin-yang balance, or are just looking to enhance whatever degree of depth you have, there's a few different avenues you can take to introduce harmony into your wardrobe. Now, keep in mind that this will ultimately depend on your personal inner relation, but in general, these are some basic attributes of garments that can support and beautifully enhance depth. Okay, so let's start with color palettes. Now, in my opinion, the use of color is one of the most impactful ways to harmonize with our personal inner relation in general. So if you want to draw out or support depth, I would recommend choosing color palettes that are deep, rich, intense, or highly saturated. Okay, next is materials and textures. Now, in my opinion, there's a wide variety of materials and textures that can harmonize well with depth, so long as there's a fair amount of depth brought in by color as well. But I want to highlight this is actually where we can start to pay close attention to the nuances of depth and differentiate which materials might be a better fit for our personal harmony. So in my opinion, there's materials that are better suited for depth that leans a little more dignified, as well as depth that leans a little more into intensity. So if your depth comes off as more dignified, I would suggest materials and textures that convey richness, such as velvet, exotic luxury furs, as well as brocade with a metallic sheen. Now, if you notice that your type of depth is more piercing and leans into being more of a femme fatale intensity, I would suggest materials and textures that are sharp, sleek, and convey a certain sultriness, such as patent leather, luxurious silks, and exotic textures such as croc. Okay, now let's touch on patterns and prints. Complementary patterns and prints can include refined geometric shapes, exotic animal print, and Baroque patterns. Now, it's also worth mentioning that individuals with a fair amount of depth can easily handle fully monochromatic looks that are deep in color, as well as crisp contrast of refined colors like black and white. Alright, so let's move forward and talk about how to accommodate weightlessness in a wardrobe. So if you're an individual who has a lot of weightlessness in your personal yin-yang balance, or are just looking to enhance whatever degree of weightlessness you have, there's a few different avenues you can take to introduce harmony into your wardrobe. Now, keep in mind that this will ultimately depend on your personal interrelation, but in general, these are some basic attributes of garments that can support and beautifully enhance your weightlessness. Okay, so let's start with color palettes. Now, again, in my opinion, the use of color is one of the most impactful ways to harmonize with our personal interrelation in general. So if you want to draw out or support your weightlessness, I would recommend choosing color palettes that are light, muted, soft, subdued, or low in saturation. Okay, so let's take a look at materials and textures. Now, just like with depth, there's a wide variety of materials and textures that can harmonize well with weightlessness, so long as there's a fair amount of weightlessness brought in by color as well. But overall, materials that are delicate, sparkling, plush, or offer soft draping will really harmonize with weightlessness best. Examples include chiffon, plush fabrics such as angora, and delicate lace. Okay, now let's touch on patterns and prints. Complementary patterns and prints can include dainty botanicals, blended watercolors and ombre effects, low contrast stripes and dots, as well as florals. Now, obviously, this isn't the full extent of wardrobe elements that would complement depth and weightlessness, but this should give you a pretty good idea of where to start. Now, remember, the point of this exercise is to effectively identify these attributes and honor them in a way that's most harmonious. So keep in mind that although you might have some heavy attributes of weightlessness or depth, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should treat the garment recommendations as a rigid checklist. The idea is to strategically adopt one or a few recommendations to see how they can bring your natural beauty forward and work within your total interrelation. So you'll want to experiment to get a feel for what's the right balance of weightlessness and depth. Okay, so now that we have a clear idea of the attributes of weightlessness and depth and how to accommodate them, let's take a look at two celebrities who I think demonstrate these characteristics beautifully and my recommendations on what is most harmonious on them. Now, I do like to use celebrity examples for a lot of my videos due to the amount of high quality images and videos I can source. These really help me convey exactly what I'm talking about and demonstrate the qualities I'm speaking on. So I never want to promote comparing yourself to a celebrity. Instead, I want to highlight the unique qualities these women have so you can get a sense of how to identify them in general. So the two celebrities I chose for this video are Janet Jackson and Catherine Zeta-Jones. So let's start with the lovely Janet Jackson. Now, there's no getting around it. She's had some major permanent physical alterations done in her lifetime, but I think that her weightlessness transcends her plastic surgery via her essence. And I'm going to be using images that I feel best demonstrate what I'm outlining. Now, part of the reason I was inspired to showcase Janet Jackson specifically was because I received a comment on my Essence video that the viewer wanted to see an example of weightlessness that's not a Caucasian girl with very fair skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes. Now, I want to insert a quick reminder that this approach to personal style is all-inclusive and is not stipulated by ethnic background. So when I read this comment, I immediately thought of Janet Jackson. So let's take a look at Janet and see exactly how weightlessness shows up in her. Okay, let's take a look at her physical characteristics. Now, in my opinion, Janet has a fairly delicate bone structure, but this can easily be overlooked by her chiseled physique. There was obviously a point at which she preferred to maintain very defined abs, but I don't necessarily think that she naturally has a classic athletic body composition. I mostly think that she's a public figure who really preferred to keep a very fit physique. But her bone structure tells a completely different story. It's undoubtedly angular, but still very delicate. And it's this delicate bone structure that is one contributing factor to her overall weightlessness. But I think the nail in the coffin in her heavy presence of weightlessness is her facial characteristics and essence traits. Now, in photos of her when she was young, presumably before she had any work done, you can see just how soft and delicate her facial features were. She has these beautiful plump cheeks, a gentle gaze, warm and slightly shy smile, and an overall softly rounded facial shape. She has a natural innocence and endearing quality about her. Okay, enough of all the photos. Let's take a look at how her essence is fully manifested.
Well, Janet was 9 back then. Now she's 18, an actress, dancer, has just completed her second solo album. What do you think of when you look at those old tapes?
I get so embarrassed.
Why?
I really do. Because I was so little.
So was everybody once.
I really get
Don't you think you were a cute little girl?
I was okay.
You were okay. And now?
I'm still all right.
Yeah, you're all right. Look, your brothers have obviously set some standards that are tough to follow. Has it been real difficult being the baby?
Well, yeah, because everyone expects me to be just as good as my brothers, to be just as talented as they are. And well, I'm me, not them.
Obviously, he saw something, and it's sad that it takes away your childhood. If I had to do it all over again, would I go about it the same way? I can't. I would really have to think about that. I would want to say no, not knowing what my life, how it would turn out, because I would love to experience what it would be like to celebrate Christmas and birthdays. I had my first birthday party when I was 23 years old. I'd never celebrated my birthday before then. You kind of feel like you missed something. But then again, you have to say to yourself, it's like a catch-22. How can you miss what you didn't have? You know,
Janet is so gentle and soft-spoken. You can tell that she is naturally very sweet and has a very soothing quality about her. She gives the impression that she's the friend that would be the first to show you affection if you were going through something hard. She has this undeniable tenderness about her. Now, I want to mention that I think Janet is a perfect example of a person who was kind of swallowed up by the Hollywood machine and almost assigned an identity because of her entertainment career. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some head-to-toe looks that I think really help bring forward her natural beauty, and some I think don't really do her any favors. Okay, so here are 3 different examples that we're going to run through. So starting with example 1, the look on the left. Now, this look is extremely representative of Janet Jackson's public persona, her entertainment aesthetic that she adapted through her career. She loves to lean into these sharp, really deep looks, and to me, this is just not a good representation of her authenticity. I don't think that this type of look really brings forward her natural beauty. Now, obviously, she is a beautiful woman and she has a gorgeous figure, and this garment is designed to fit her very, very well. But overall, I don't see this as something that, like I said, is bringing out her authenticity. Overall, it's very harsh and it actually tends to drag her down. So we really start to lose that tender quality that she has. Now, to me, the look on the right, so just below that first look there, to me, this is really a step above what's going on the left. So we still have some of that crisp construction that she really likes to lean into in a lot of her ensembles, which is actually complementary to her frame because we do see that she has some angularity there to support the crisp kind of construction. However, if you look at the composition of the overall head-to-toe look, it's still soft and has a particular weightlessness to it. And a lot of that is brought in by the construction of the trousers as well as the color. So we have a couple of different elements here that's really allowing for some of that weightless quality that she has to shine. And you can see that like her face is just, it's lit up. We really get a sense of who Janet Jackson is as a person, the holistic view of her. So I love this comparison in particular. Okay, cruising on over to example 2. Now, this is an interesting comparison, and it's not really meant to serve as an ensemble comparison. This is more a capture of essence, because if you guys have watched my essence video, you would know that there's a lot of essence that's available to be captured in photographs. And I, in particular, mentioned black and white photographs, which, we have an example of that here. So in the first example here, example 2, or the first photo on the left, it's this black and white. It's supposed to be a little bit of a provocative photo. It's supposed to communicate a particular seriousness. And to me, I just feel that this is way too forced. It feels like Janet was almost being coached to do this. This is not something that she would naturally do. We've seen that from her interviews, that this is not an authentic expression that we could expect to see on Janet. And it really comes across that way. It's too serious, and it just overall feels very forced. So all the styling aside, the capture of essence here is really something that is not true to her. Now, if we move over to the photograph on the right, we can see that there's some softened shapes in the wardrobe and around her face. The lighting is a little bit different, but what we're really capturing here is her hallmark warm smile and that soft gaze. And this to me just screams authenticity. It's like I can hear her voice when I see this photo. So, the garments do play a role in how we express ourselves. And I think that this is a perfect example of that, because I'm sure as she put on the garment in this black and white photo, she was made to feel a certain way. And as a result of that, she's going to try and emote a certain way. But if you guys agree with me here, it just feels like it's a little forced, as opposed to the photo on the right, where this seems like it was easy for her. This was an effortless moment for her to emote. She's not trying. This is her at her most natural. So again, kind of love this little different take here that's not just solely focused on the garments. So real quick before we move on to example 3, I do want to make a note of this top photo, the black and white photo, and contrast it to some other examples of her being serious, because I feel like maybe this example could lead one to think to themselves, what is Janet's version of serious? So if we look at this image compilation here, you can see the look on the left is my least favorite. It seems very contrived and posed. It's just so inauthentic in my opinion. Now, like I said, if we contrast that to these other 3 images, none of these images are her in the midst of a giggle or overly emoting with joy and, giving us a big smile. These are all still relatively somber. These are all still her version of serious, but that's exactly the point. It's her version of serious. So we don't have to have the contrived image over on the left to get a sense of what Janet would be like in a serious moment. So I love the black and white photo over on the right. This is so gorgeous, and to me this is actually extremely sexy and sultry, way more so than the look on the left. There's just something here that conveys her delicate nature, but also gives her this kind of sexiness. I love this. And then the middle photo, she's looking right at us. You can see that she's, again, not overly emoting. She's just giving us this somber look, but the natural soft gaze in her eyes is able to naturally emote a particular kind of sexiness. So she doesn't have to go into the sultry mode that we see in the black and white photo on the left. Here, it's so much more effortless. And then the photo on the right, this one is pretty stylized with lighting. I actually really love this photo. And again, she's not looking at a particular subject. She's not looking at us, but she is kind of looking off into the distance. You can tell that she's in thought. And here we actually get a sliver of a smile from her, but it's nothing to make us think that she's this innocent woman that just would never do wrong or anything like that. She's in thought. And so to me, this was a good contrasting example from the black and white photo on the left. Okay, having said all that, let's cruise on over to example 3. Now, this look on the left, I went back and forth if I wanted to include this because I just feel that this is low-hanging fruit, and there would be a lot of women that would have a hard time making this sort of ensemble look 100% harmonious and congruent with their natural total interrelation. So, and that's not to say that women cannot express themselves in this sort of way. This is a very sexy look, and I am all about anyone wearing whatever they want. But the point that I'm bringing home is harmony and what appears to be authentic with the individual, which in turn really illuminates one's natural beauty. So this photo, I did decide obviously to include it, and really in my opinion, this is the type of quote unquote sexy that she just doesn't need. She's more than welcome to wear whatever she would like. Again, I will say this until the cows come home, but this is something that is more distracting to her natural sexiness than enhancing. So what we're given here is a lot of skin, a lot of reflective leather, a lot of fishnet, which implies a particular kind of sexiness. However, her authentic sexiness supersedes all of this. She doesn't need it. So again, this is just not a great ensemble for Janet to bring forward her natural beauty. So moving on down to the look on the right, between the soft styling of her hair, the construction of the garment that she's wearing, as well as the color palette and slight details that it has, really overall this, and we can't even get a full picture of the garment, but already you can tell it highlights her delicate characteristics and her sparkling essence. And this to me is much more sexy and appealing than the look on the left. So these little nuances in wardrobe really do make a difference, and I am just really curious on what Janet's personal style would look like had she taken a different road in life, had she not been the baby sister of the Jackson 5 and didn't have this booming entertainment career. I just really wonder where she would be and how she would really curate her own personal style, because like I said, I think that she's just kind of adopted a particular persona, and I personally don't see a lot of personal essence expression in her wardrobe. So anyways, this is Janet Jackson's little comparison, and if I was to give Janet Jackson a personal aesthetic, I would say it would be descriptive of feminine weightlessness with a hint of playfulness. Okay, now let's move forward and take a look at Catherine Zeta-Jones and the beautiful depth she naturally exudes. Catherine's physical characteristics are very striking and quite bold. She has an angular bone structure with an elongated vertical line, even though she's only moderately tall at 5 feet 7 inches. And she has an overall solid presence. She also has high contrast interaction between her hair, eyes, and complexion, and a slightly heavy and sultry gaze, which creates a beautiful deep effect. But just like Janet, we really see her depth come alive in her essence. So let's take a look at how exactly this manifests.
It's great. I think it's nice to see all the best people of the country come together and to applaud for us Brits. I think it's great. And I was very, very happy today because my fiance's TV series won Best Series, taking over the Asylum, so I'm very happy. It's always nice when there's a win in the family, you know. It makes it all so much nicer getting dressed up.
Was this a fun movie for you to do?
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun, and Uma was great, and Jessica. I mean, just the ensemble was fantastic. But I have to say that I watch sports,
You're a huge sports fan.
Really, more than movies, because you never know the ending of sports. In movies, I can always figure it out.
Yeah.
That's my job.
And you've got a real run of movies coming out suddenly right now. 2 opening today. You have several more coming up just in the next few months. You just had Rock of Ages a few months ago. You've been really busy.
Yeah, you know, after Michael had his cancer, and then I had my issues, I had to stop for a moment. And then I've just been doing smaller roles in great fun movies with great directors.
Okay, I think one of the standout characteristics of Catherine's essence is her beautiful, deep and textured voice. She also has this natural cadence that is reminiscent of old Hollywood or the transatlantic accent because of her natural accent, which adds a richness to the way that she communicates. She also has a palatable directness and natural, regal poise about her. Now, Catherine seems to be a celebrity that is consistent in dressing in ensembles that harmonize well with her, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some looks out there that can't be critiqued. So let's take a look at some head-to-toe looks that I think really help bring forward her beautiful natural depth, and some that I think work against her natural harmony. Okay, so we have these 3 examples for Catherine Zeta-Jones. Now, as I mentioned, Catherine does a really good job of dressing for her yin-yang balance, in my opinion. So she's really good at use of line and silhouette as well as color palette. But let's take a look at some of the looks that I just kind of feel hit the mark a little bit, starting with example 1, look on the left. Now, overall, this is by far, I think, Catherine's worst look. I hate to say that about a beautiful woman, but it has nothing to do with her. It's just that the clothes are not doing anything for her. So overall, this look is way too youthful in its overall design. And really, this is the kind of composition that conveys a certain type of high tempo. And Catherine, as we saw from her Essence videos, that is just not her. She's way more even-keeled and she has a lot of depth to her essence. And overall, this is way too weightless in color for her. So altogether, this is just not congruent, and you can see this almost doesn't even look like Catherine. When I was searching through a library of photos for this comparison, this was one of the photos that came up, and I almost clicked past it because it doesn't even look like her. She looks unidentifiable to me in this ensemble. Now, if we look down at the look on the right, you can see that there are some similarities to the look on the left. So we have the cat eye glasses as well as the fedora hat and blazer top layer. However, the use of line construction and color here is much more congruent with Catherine Zeta-Jones, and it's really honoring her depth by connecting her back to the garments with the use of the black dress. This would be her version of weightlessness. We can see that the construction of the dress is a little bit airy. However, that's in contrast to the color. And we can see that the top layer blazer is a little more constructed. However, that's in contrast to the weightless color. So we have a little bit of a juxtaposition here, if you will, between yin and yang in relation to Catherine. So overall, she's just able to remain connected to her total ensemble because of the level of depth that's brought in here, even though there's some elements of weightlessness. Okay, cruising on over to example 2, the look on the left. So when I first came across this image, I definitely saw the dress before I saw Catherine. So there's a couple of things going on here with the dress that's just really not honoring Catherine's depth, and it comes off as disjointed. So her and the dress end up looking separate rather than working in harmony and complementing each other. Okay, so cruising on over to example 2, look on the left. So when I first came across this image, I definitely saw the dress before I saw Catherine. Now, there's some things that could work for Catherine with this dress. I think one of them is the construction. She can appear in harmony in construction that offers some softness. Not everything has to be rigid with her because she does have some softness. However, when we're speaking to her depth, the combination of characteristics that this dress offers creates a disjointed effect when placed on Catherine. And that's because of 1, the construction, and 2, the use of color. So we can see that the color is very weightless. It has a watercolor effect as well as little patterned details. Now, these are the things that are just not going to enhance her regal nature, her natural sophistication, and like I said, can really make the garment appear disconnected from her. Now, if we go down to the dress on the right, we can see that we have a little bit more of a rich color palette that's brought in, and the totality of the pattern is bold. And what I mean by that is, although there's little segments that are kind of this tie-dye effect, if you will, it's not an overall blended watercolor effect. If we're looking at Catherine in this image as a whole, the pattern overall is still bold, and we have some really cool geometric lines going on, which again is able to really connect her back to her depth. And this might seem a little nitpicky, but these are the little nuances that we can keep in mind for ourselves when we're evaluating our head-to-toe looks and when we're prospecting buying new garments for our wardrobes. Okay, cruising on over to example 3. Now, the look on the left here is it sparks a certain nostalgia with me, not because that's what's being conveyed necessarily, but I can just tell that this is from Catherine's early days in Hollywood, and it might even be from one of her first red carpet appearances. And I say that because this dress is very different from a lot of other looks that we've seen Catherine in throughout the years on the red carpet and even just in her personal life. But some of the things that I want to highlight about this dress is that although it is very complimentary to her figure, the silhouette is very nice. Overall, again, the weightlessness that's brought in through the color palette and the material here is just too much. Again, to me, she looks very disjointed from this, and it looks slightly inauthentic on her. If this was a little more rich in color, or there were some more rich materials used, I think that this would be much more in harmony with her. But overall, again, this is just leaning a little too delicate on her, even though overall the silhouette and the fit is very beautiful. Now, something I want to highlight in this example, if we cruise on down to the look on the right, and we've obviously fast forward a couple of decades, is that Catherine has so much depth that she can do, I feel, what Janet Jackson aims to do, and that's to wear a sharp leather dress during the day. Now, of course, I have no idea where Catherine is going in this photo, and I do promote the idea of time, place, occasion, so it's not that I think that a leather dress like this is appropriate for everyday wear necessarily. I think that you should probably have somewhere to go aside from the grocery store and something like this, unless you just absolutely have a hankering to go grocery shopping in a dress like this. But my point is that Catherine almost makes this appear casual, and that is due to the amount of depth that she has. Of course, we can talk about the silhouette of the dress and the cut and the beautiful neckline and everything like that, but when we're just looking through the lens of yin and yang, Catherine has enough yang, enough depth to be able to easily carry a dress like this and make it look like it's a daytime look. So I love that. I love this third contrast here. And I would personally label Catherine Zeta-Jones' personal aesthetic as sophisticated femininity with refined drama. Alright guys, I hope this video helped illuminate weightlessness and depth and offered an alternative perspective to identifying yin and yang within yourself. I also hope that you're able to see that neither one of these characteristics is better than the other. They each have their own beauty to be explored and thoroughly expressed. So that is it for today, you guys. If you found this video helpful and like content like this, I would love it if you kept coming around. So feel free to subscribe, like, and share. And I'd really love to hear how you identify weightlessness and depth within yourself, and what are some techniques you like to use to express your own version of yin and yang. I'd love to hear what you have to say about all that in the comments down below. But like I said, that is it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the next video. Bye.